Good morning, everyone. Welcome, members of the public, to our public meeting number 44 of the Post Commission. I'm going to now, as the chair of the commission, call the meeting to order. Let me take attendance, please. Commissioner Baker. Present.
Good morning, President.
Commissioner Bluestone.
Good morning, I'm here.
Mr. Calderon.
Good morning, I'm here.
Commissioner Ellison.
Good morning, present.
Commissioner Hall.
Good morning, present.
Commissioner Kajrosian.
Good morning, I'm present.
Commissioner Luma.
Good morning, present.
Commissioner Talley.
Morning, present.
And also present today is our former commissioner, Clementina Sherry. And with that, I turn this over to our executive director, Enrique Zuniga.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning, commissioners. We do not have meeting minutes for you this morning, so which we will have for the next commission meeting. So our agenda today starts with a recognition to former Commissioner Clementina Sherry, who a couple of months ago left the commission for personal reasons, and we never got a chance until today to recognize her contributions and just acknowledge that we were sad to see her go, glad to see her back. We know that she will remain committed to the work that she does and advising and advocating on the work that pertains to Post and connected to Post. And in that occasion, I want to share my screen and present to her a certificate of appreciation that I will read for everybody, and suspect that the chair and others may have a comment about that too. So if you bear with me, I want to share my screen. And can everybody see what I have on the screen? So this is the certificate of appreciation that will be framed and sent to Commissioner Sherry, former Commissioner Sherry. And I want to read that it is presented to her in grateful appreciation for her distinguished service to the Peace Officer Standards and Training Commission and to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. As a founding member of the Post Commission, Commissioner Sherry was instrumental in the implementation of the multifaceted police reform law, while simultaneously guiding the formation of a new public agency. A person of character and integrity, Commissioner Sherry brought her commitment to justice and fairness for all to the Post Commission. Post extends its heartfelt gratitude for Commissioner Sherry's contributions, consummate professionalism, and admirable dedication to public service. Again, thank you very much for your contributions, Commissioner Sherry. You might not know that your comments went far. There's work that has been done and will continue to be done, given your perspective, background, and advocacy. And with that, I'll turn it over back to Chair Hinkle to see if anybody wants to say anything else.
Thank you, Enrique. Commissioner Sherry, I can only echo the laudatory comments that are part of the commission. We are very grateful to having worked with you. I speak for all the members of the founding members of the commission. Very grateful for your dedication and all of your assistance in the matters that we dealt with as we began the Post Commission. Thank you enormously, and we wish you well. Is there any other commissioner who wishes to say anything? Yes, Commissioner Ellison, please.
Commissioner Sherry, I've known her prior to her arrival on the post, and when I saw her being appointed to that position, I was extremely happy because of her advocacy community, and I continue to do that work. I consider her a friend, as well. And I just wanted to thank her for her time here, but also the time and the work that she has done outside of this commission. It has been the reason why this commission was formed and why it works so well. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Luma?
I echo what Commissioner Ellison says. I think, Commissioner, or former Commissioner Sherry, you always lead with advocacy and doing what's right. Not only the work that you with the commission, but the work that you continue to do for members of the community, for survivors. It's always important to make sure everybody's voice is at the table. And I think you've been the teacher of that for everybody for a very long time. And so I want you to know you are well respected. You will be very much missed. And I look forward to seeing what you continue to do for those who often don't feel seen and heard. So thank you so much.
Commissioner Bluestone?
Yes, hi, Commissioner Sherry. I'm so glad to see you. I just wanted to mention on a personal note that you were the first person that I met when we were sworn in, and your warmth was memorable to me and made me feel very comfortable right at the outset. And I have just really appreciated the calm and measured tone that you have brought to the commission, and will really miss your valuable perspective and wish you the best of luck.
Thank you. Clementina, would you like to say anything?
I'm speechless. Thank you so much. It's again, when I was nominated and the governor asked me why I wanted, I says, I don't want it. You invited me. So thank you so much. And so it felt like I didn't belong, yet once I got in there and met everybody, I realized that I do belong. I did belong and contributed as much as I could. I will miss being on it. It wasn't an easy decision to make, yet knowing that I really learned a lot, and I was able to share what I've learned with my community and continue to invite them to attend the meetings, to be informed and to be aware. So while I will not be as a commissioner, I will from time to time be able to join the public meetings so that I can continue to learn, to understand. And as Enrique said, I'm available for anything, any questions, any comments. And I'm just happy that Deborah Hall said yes, so that I could depart and that the work can continue. So I thank all of you. And it's just so interesting to hear that, as a founding member, this is something I can add to my resume, which is a great, amazing experience that, again, I didn't think, it's not that I didn't think much of it. I knew the importance of this post commission and the fact that it's peace officers, where the Commonwealth of Massachusetts is taking this word peace and adding it into the police standard commission. That in itself speaks volume, where we're making peace a part of our culture and not as an afterthought. So I am just so honored and humbled and thank all of you, because I feel I've learned a lot more and I've grown a lot more, and I can be much more vocal within this part of the journey. So I truly appreciate all of you. And I would love to just keep you guys informed as to what I will be doing and what God has called me to do next. So I hope I can just share the information, with Jamie, and then she's able to share it with the commission if that is allowable. So thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you for those lovely words. I will now move on to the next item on the agenda. The executive director's report. Enrique, please.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to move on to the, and once again, thank you, former Commissioner Sherry. I'm going to share my screen. as is customary, and move to a PowerPoint to do my executive director report. Can everybody see my screen, I take it? Okay, so as part of today's report, I will be giving you an update on the effort relative to the school resource officer certification, the work that the Division of Certification in collaboration with the MPTC and our legal team have been doing over the past few months and the progress to date. I'm going to provide a brief update of the disciplinary records project and some short-term goals. And I want to talk about, as part of the last part of my presentation, talk about future certification policy matters and some planning that we are beginning to do for calendar year 2024, and how I propose that we think about addressing some of those large policy questions. Of course, at any point, any commissioners have any questions or comments, please let me know, and we can always come back to any section of these. So earlier this year, the regulations governing the certification of school resource officers became effective. During October of this year, POST, in collaboration with the MPTC, began certifying school resource officers. The occasion was aligned with the fact that a major part of that certification is certain specialized SRO training that is provided by the MPTC. And such training took place recently as well. It happens actually twice a year, and the second installment of this calendar year happened at the very beginning of November. So the statute provides that a school resource officer needs to meet certain additional criteria to be certified by POST. The SRO certification is a certification that is in addition or on top of the law enforcement certification. So in other words, the one prerequisite for SRO certification is that the officer be certified by POST. Another aspect of this certification is that annual SRO specialized training that I mentioned earlier that is administered by the MPTC. So because of that, of course, the MPTC and POST have collaborated on the deployment of this certification over the past few months. And I actually, that started before that with the formulation of those regulations that govern the this program, and those are 555 CMR 10.00, which are titled Specialized Certification for School Resource Officers. So to obtain an SRO certification, the individual or the chief of police may apply for that certification. This application consists of two parts. The first part is an application form, and the second part is an officer attestation form. In general, we capture certain additional information relative to the SRO on top of what we already collect for the law enforcement officer. We corroborate compliance with certain requirements, and as I mentioned, notably the completion of that specialized training, which is on top of the regular training that they're required to have. And we also ask that the officer make certain representations about their role in order to issue that SRO certification. Both the SRO application and the SRO attestation form were included in the meeting packet and are also available in our website under the certification module for everybody to just see and download and submit to POST. So POST began issuing SRO certificates this past month. This chart represents the progress to date. There are approximately 427 individuals who have completed the required training. And the figures in this chart speak to the work in progress that the Division of Certification is managing. One important aspect of the SRO certification is that we have made the expiration date of such certification coincide with the expiration of the officer certification, given that the LEO certification is a precondition of the SRO certification. So the initial certifications are going to be for a period of less than 3 years, again, to coincide with those expiration dates. But like the law enforcement certification, the SRO certification is valid for 3 years. So as part of the monthly reports that we publish in our website, we have also started to publish individuals who have this SRO certification. So people can look that up in our website. These are again early numbers because there's many more individuals that would be qualified to be certified as police officers because they have taken the training. But so far, there's 89 individuals that are certified, 56 agencies with at least one SRO in their ranks that have been certified. And there are at least 20 departments with more than one SRO. So, yes, sorry, I will move on to, yes, Commissioner.
Enrique, yeah, can I, on the SRO, and thank you for flagging it. And maybe I can sit down with Randy and his team afterwards, because there's a couple of issues, particularly here in Boston, and maybe Chief Baker can weigh in as well. There is no MOU in Boston currently. It's been trying to operate on one for 2 years. Does that affect, and the question comes up to me, does that affect whether or not a person is actually in SRO if there is no MOU with that city or town? Is one of the big questions that often comes up, since Boston, being a large city, does not have an MOU and has been trying to get one across the finish line for the last 2 years.
Yes, Commissioner. One precondition for the SROs to be able to operate under in the schools is the presence of that MOU that you referenced, which is an MOU between the city governor, the city governance. In the case of Boston, that would be the mayor and the
superintendent.
The superintendent.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
My understanding is that that is independent from having anybody be a certified SRO. The requirements to be certified SRO are mostly driven by what I explained: the application, certain additional information, and the completion of the specialized training. The attestation form that I mentioned are representations from the individual officer. However, in order to be able to operate, they need to there needs to be that MOU, and that's, again, as you mentioned correctly, that's something that's been on hold as far as we can tell, has not been completed. The requirement of that SRO, that MOU, by the way, is in a different law, not police reform. And maybe Randy, I'm sorry to put you on the spot, Randy, but is there anything that I said that needs to be corrected in any way or expanded? He's very familiar with, of course, that law.
No, that's all exactly right. A couple things that I would just add are that the way the regulations are written, if somebody is serving as a school resource officer and there's no sufficient MOU and somebody brings that to the commission's attention, then the commission could look into that, could restrict their certification on the idea that they're serving in a way that's not compliant with the other statute that the executive director mentioned. But the other thing I just want to mention, because I think it's important, is that all of this really only applies if the person fits within the definition of an SRO. And, that's spelled out in the statute, but the short of it is it needs to be somebody who's charged with performing several forms of responsibility. And just as a practical matter, it's not worded this way exactly in the regulations, but as a practical matter, it ends up being somebody who is really devoting most of their time or all of their time to being a school resource officer. They're the point person for the agency. They have a lot of responsibilities. So it's not the case that anyone who goes into a school is then subject to this whole school resource officer scheme. People can go into schools to respond to emergencies, to present to classes on other isolated occasions, and it doesn't trigger all these requirements as the commission has provided.
Right. So just to follow up on that, because it seems to be a little gap there. For instance, I'm assigned to the school unit in Boston as a detective. I go through the training, but I'm really not required because I don't operate the same as the officers do in the unit. I do investigations, but just so that we cover, the 2 detectives in my unit also go through the SRO training. But it sounds like there's a little, and that's where the hiccup is that the MOU is required from the superintendent of schools. It's not required by the post, but then the operational piece for the officers, there's some gray area there on whether or not they can operate under the guidelines of posts in their performance in the schools because there's no agreement.
Well, it only would become an issue for the post commission if they meet all the criteria for being an SRO. So again, not just the limited work, but they're in this what often would end up being a full-time role. They're serving in that role, and there's no MOU, and it's brought to the attention of the commission. Then the commission would look into that, and could restrict the certification. But again, there's several things that need to happen before it gets to that point. And in a city where that has not elected to have SROs, because as you know, Commissioner, but some people watching might not realize this, it was once the case that it was required for all districts. It's now no longer the case. They can elect to have it or not have it. If it's not, if that district or municipality does not have SROs, then it's hard to see how any of this would become an issue.
Okay. Yeah, I would love to sit down with you in the future and just try to hammer out this before it becomes a problem for some folks.
Sure.
Thank you.
Well, we'll do that, Commissioner. I saw earlier that Commissioner Baker may have had a question, but then.
No, I was just gonna chime in. So we have SROs, we have the MOUs. Just to Commissioner Ellison's comment that, even with the SROs, our detectives who, do have to respond to the schools as well, they're not SRO certified, but they, if there's a matter that they have to respond to, they're going to respond. All the juvenile, policies, all the juvenile laws still stay in effect, but we can't, we would never not have our detectives not going to schools because, just simply because they're not certified. And like you said, Commissioner Ravitz, that doesn't come out of post. We did that through the district attorney's office. We did that with the superintendent, and it was all separate. So we as well have the detectives respond in school. They're not, they're not SROs. They're basically, following up cases basically that involves juvenile. They adhere to the juvenile laws. They adhere to, anything that, bringing parents in, et cetera. Just hope that, just trying to chime in there that, we do have those MOUs, but obviously a detective has to be a detective. If something's happening, it has to be addressed.
That's right. That was an early concern. I remember some of the comments we had when we had the hearing on these regulations. Those were some of the initial concerns by a couple of people. Okay, let me move on to disciplinary records update. We continue to do work on this project, of course. We have cleaned up and reconciled an additional 946 disciplinary records that translates into 1,330 allegations. We anticipate that we will send the heads of agencies an agency-specific report with these records to do a final verification prior to publishing those records. The anticipated timeframe is to send those records by the end of this month, and to ask the heads of agencies for a turnaround time by the end of December. Those records that are not the subject of any changes or updates will be published shortly thereafter. We're also working to issue an update of previously released data within the next couple of weeks, and we anticipate that that will coincide with our practice of releasing records and updates by the first of the month. Finally, I'll move to the third part of my report, and I want to bring up that we have several upcoming policy decisions that will need to be addressed in some way during this upcoming year. Although it might appear that this is long-term planning, during 2024, which is really upon us, POST will have to decide and implement a process for recertifying the first class of individuals that POST previously certified. Before long, POST will also need to certify, or actually recertify, the first round of individuals in the tranche with the last name A through H. Those milestones are represented in this slide. By the way, I want to point out to a gray area in the statute that was addressed by the Division of Certification at the time. The statute required that POST begin certifying academic graduates on December 1st of 2021, which we did, and we did in collaboration with the MPTC, etc. There was another milestone that we had to consider, and it's also in the statute, and that was that all officers active on July 1, 2021 were granted certification by statute. And that certification had different expiration dates according to their last name, A through H by the next year, and so on and so forth. The only point here is that by next July, and in some cases, obviously later, POST will need to recertify officers that POST itself has previously certified. That may be as many as 171 individuals, and of course, is something that we need to start planning for. Another couple of elements of the same question, so for policy question, is also represented in this slide. The largest group to be recertified for the second time will be those officers with last names A through H. That day will be July 1 of 2025. And although the timing appears several months away, clearly, it is necessary for us to start planning for that undertaking, given the large amount of individuals in this cohort. Our estimate is that the certification of 10,000 individuals, give or take, will expire during 2025. And it is fair to say that the second round of certification is not, or should not be, assumed to be identical to the initial round of certification. There's a number of things that don't need to be, frankly, verified twice. So we need to start planning for those procedures. That would include modifying the relevant regulations, because the way we decided to address the recertification process was through regulations. And we all know that promulgating regulations can be, of course, an involved process, and we need to solicit comment and have hearings, etc. Another aspect of this is that POST has very broad discretion when it comes to the procedures it can develop or implement as part of this process. By way of example, hosts could simply ascertain whether anything has changed since the last certification and concentrate on examining those exceptions and changes. Or conversely, hosts could deploy a different questionnaire and ask chiefs to administer a different oral interview. Some commissioners will remember that there were 2 questions in the earlier version of the questionnaire that were eventually not deployed. For either case, we would need to implement changes into our technology platform, and that of course takes time, needs planning, some resources, and of course coordination with our technology vendor and our technology team. The second round, or the second aspect of second big policy area, is that of certification of agencies. Post is tasked with certifying agencies. That is section 5 of chapter 6E. The standards that are included in that section are listed here in this slide. And with a few notable exception, by the way, the statute provides few additional details or requirements regarding these broad areas. So as you can see, each of the topics in the statute regarding certification of agencies is quite broad. It is fair to assume that many, or perhaps most departments would at least have some existing procedures and best practices in each of these areas. But as the external body in charge of certifying agencies, hosts will have to conceive and implement procedures to corroborate adherence to such standards, etc. So alternatively, hosts may establish and or require agencies to adopt model policies, for example. This is an area that we have researched from other states, by the way. And specifically, of course, we would be most interested in deploying procedures on areas that are very close to some of the procedures that we have already undertaken. Notably, I'm thinking of the internal affairs investigations. Post in great measure currently relies on the IAs that agencies conduct in order to bring disciplinary proceedings to the Commission. So agency certification is again another area where the statute directly specifically points to Post to establish standards in consultation with the MPTC. A third and final policy area that I wanted to bring up today is the topic of the psychological and physical evaluation. I've included direct language from the statute in the relevant sections of Chapter 6E. And in the case of Section 4F1, the statute requires the successful completion of a psychological and physical evaluation. The approach that Post took last time was to ascertain whether these 2 evaluations had taken place on an individual officer at any time in the officer's career. Typically, by the way, that happens at the beginning of the tenure with the department. However, a subsequent section of the statute directs Post to consider whether those candidates for recertification continue to satisfy the requirements of said subsection, and that is Section 4, subsection 13I. So when we examine this area in consultation with the MPTC, we quickly learned that this brings a topic of officer health and wellness, and that topic is really quite broad. Indeed, agencies, not just throughout Massachusetts, but throughout the country, spend a fair amount of time and effort trying to address this topic of officer wellness. While the statute affords Post an important role in this area. We should be cognizant of the existing environment and challenges in trying to address these areas. By the way, later in the agenda, there will be a short presentation from the legal team on some of the research they've done in thinking about addressing this topic. So those three policy areas that I just summarized, second round of recertification, agency recertification, or certification rather, and officer health and wellness are broad policy areas that, of course, require plenty of research, consultation, and deliberation. We recognize that agencies and associations spend a fair amount of time and resources in these areas, and that it happens on an ongoing basis. We should also understand and consider the work that is being done at the national level. And I'll mention by way of example that the International Association of Chiefs of Police, who has an annual conference, in recent years decided to add a second annual conference focused exclusively on the topic of officer health and wellness, given the interest and timeliness and need around this topic. I'll also mention that because such broad authority and discretion that POST has, we could do this or begin to try to think about this and tackling these topics in very different ways. And of course, because the broad mandate, this is really big undertakings, we think that the only way to go would be on an incremental or an ongoing basis. So considering all of that, I recommend that the Commission consider forming a subcommittee of the Commission. A subcommittee of the Commission could solicit and include direct input from other stakeholders. It may include one or more commissioners from POST, and it could also, of course, include or simply invite members from other groups. I'm specifically thinking of the MPTC, given that there is required consultation with the MPTC in a few of those key areas. But there's, of course, other organizations, the chiefs of police, mass chiefs, or the large city chiefs that, like last time, could be very important, or their voices could be very important to consider when we think about these policy areas. I will also mention, because it shouldn't go without saying, that any subcommittee of the Commission would be subject to the open meeting law. It would be staffed and supported by POST staff in the same way that the Commission meetings are supported by staff. By that I mean posting agendas, facilitating the discussion, presentations, inviting speakers, etc., and of course maintaining and collecting and issuing minutes. So at this point, I am not suggesting that we take up a discussion as to the composition and charter or of any subcommittee. And what I wanted to do really was to introduce the idea and get a sense from commissioners if they are in general support of that. We could come back at the next Commission meeting and discuss, of course, options and alternatives. There are alternatives, of course, to this approach, but I believe that given the broadness that I outlined in terms and significance on some of these policy areas, that we may be well suited to consider a subcommittee of the Commission. So with that, let me pause here and see if the commissioners have questions or comments. Commissioner Ellison?
Yeah, just a clarification, if you don't mind, Enrique. You say on the certifications, for instance, you say A through H would be coming up in 2025. How would that affect like new hires who've already fallen into that A through H window? Would they be recertified differently than that group that came about because the time frame won't be the same? Is that going to be handled differently? Can you explain that?
Yes, thank you, Commissioner. So every month or so, there's a new academy graduating. Every other month there's a couple of academies around with with officers with last names A through C, right? There's no, they have not been tagged because these are new officers. Every time we certify an officer at those times, it's a 3-year certification. So in the very long run, there will be certifications happening every day, every month, really. The number of people with last names A through H is going to decrease over time as those people retire. But there will be retire or leave the force, etc. So there will be, but we're still going to be living with, in the short term, with the reality that a large group of people were certified on July 1 of 2022 and 23 and so on and so forth. The point I was trying to make in my presentation is that certifying a very large group of people presented quite a few challenges in the past and will continue to present, logistical considerations. Let me just not call them challenges, but considerations. We need to plan for them in advance. We need to have a technology tool. We need to modify regulations in some cases where it's appropriate. And that's the reason of me bringing these topics early on, because we don't want to presume that everything is going to be the same. I think that the language in the statute assumes that we could change, we could enhance what we've done, we could go in other areas, we could simplify, et cetera, et cetera. Did I answer your question, Commissioner?
Right, just so. No, you did, and really mainly for the public, because I think everyone would be thinking that all of the A through H's would be certified the same, but it depends on the time when you came on the job, when you were hired. You're not going to be running, because the certification runs for the 3-year period, and everyone won't be serving it at the same time, just so people can at least track, if they want to, when someone's certification went into play.
That's right. There's again, since December 1 of 2021, we have been certifying academy graduates, and there's a steady state
Right.
of graduates, every month.
Okay. Thank you.
Enrique, thank you very much for that excellent presentation. I wonder whether you might just explain to members of the public who may have some questions or comments how they can communicate with regard to the issues that you've addressed. And then I do see, and I apologize for not noticing this before, that Commissioner Bluestone has a question or a comment.
Yeah, let me, before Commissioner Bluestone, let me just answer the first part. As usual, they can call, email, or contact us, in the way that the public normally does. post-comments@mass.gov. Our information is also on our website, and we continue to get a lot of feedback from the law enforcement community, and we consider all of that quite valuable. I might also mention that we have a monthly meeting with the NPTC, and we've begun to discuss these type of broad areas among everything else that we discuss with them. They will be a major player or stakeholder in these efforts, because we're directed by statute to collaborate, of course, with them, and we do so in a very efficient way. Commissioner Bluestone?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to make a comment about the issue of wellness, since it's a topic that we've really been talking about since the inception of POST, and it's such an important topic in the current climate. And some of the issues that have made it very difficult for us to sort of move forward with how we view wellness and what programming we would support is that there are lots of programs across the state and lots of information that is difficult to gather together because different parts of the state have different types of programs. Also, there's lots of recent information about what's going on in other states and lots of new information about how other states have been innovative in this regard. We've thought about the use of telehealth in addition to in-person wellness programming, and there's some evidence that telehealth programming has been quite effective. But overall, I think one of the concerns is that there's a lack of outcome research related to the programs that have been put in place in different states. And one of the goals I hope that we would consider is how to determine if these programs are effective and that we're not simply funding programs that are popular, but ensuring that there's some outcome data that supports what we do here in Massachusetts. So I, for one, am very much in favor of a subcommittee that would focus on this particular topic and bring different people to the table who can share information that we need to make good decisions here.
Thank you, Commissioner Bluestone. And once again, are there any other commissioners with questions or comments as to anything that Enrique has provided in his report? I don't think I do see any hands in the air at this point. Again, thank you very much, Enrique, and those who have worked with you on the matters that you addressed in the report. And I think we will next move on to the General Counsel's Randall Rapids' legal update, please.
Randy, it says you've shared your screen, but I only see a black screen. Is that what you see as well?
Yeah, I'm sorry, my computer froze. Let me try again. Okay, can you
Yes.
see the screen now? Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, this is a presentation on a proposed policy regarding the removal of certain information from the Commission's public database. And as I'm sure people will recall, at the last meeting, there was a discussion of a proposed policy regarding the relinquishment of certification coupled with the removal of information. And that proposed policy has been revised. And so it looks different now than it did last time. And I'll just provide a recap of the discussions, partly for the benefit of any members of the public who may be watching. The Commission's database regulations essentially provide that officers who are no longer serving will see their information removed from the Commission's public database at the end of their certification period. And so that balances the fact that on one hand, they're now private citizens. On the other hand, as long as they have a certification, they could become reemployed in law enforcement, and there could still be an interest in obtaining information about their backgrounds. But that prompted questions about whether officers can have their information, whether there's a way for them to have their information, particularly information on complaints and disciplinary matters, removed earlier if they relinquish their certification. And so the last draft policy would have allowed for the relinquishment of certification in return for the Commission's removing information from the database. And as far as the removal of information from the database, it relied in part on a provision of the regulations stating that that public database shall not make available to members of the general public information concerning a complaint or disciplinary matter that the Commission, by a vote of the Commissioners, has decided not to make available to members of the general public, except where special access is allowed. So that policy provided for that matter to be presented before the Commission, and it provided a path for that matter to get there. And it would have allowed also for certification to be relinquished for other reasons, such as a way of settling a disciplinary matter. But it added a qualification stating that the person could still face disciplinary action if the commission discovered evidence of misconduct on their part that occurred while the officer was serving. But that then raised other questions and some complications about matters such as how the process would work, how action would be pursued against somebody whose certification has been relinquished, particularly action to decertify somebody who no longer has a certification. And so this revised policy now puts aside the relinquishment part. It doesn't provide for relinquishment of certification, and it just focuses on that original issue, a process for a former officer or an officer who's departing law enforcement to obtain removal of information from the public database. It doesn't foreclose relinquishments of certification, but it just leaves that subject to be addressed, if at all, at a point when it's presented. So the commission could still take that up in the future. So in this new revised policy, Section A still provides definitions. Sections B and C provide for the executive director to develop an application form and allow an officer to request this type of relief, removal of information from the database, by submitting such an application form. And then Section D states that an application form shall inform the applicant of certain things. First, for the application to be considered, the applicant must not have been decertified. So in other words, decertified individuals would always continue to have a record of their decertification in the public database. This option wouldn't be available for them. It would also inform applicants that to be considered, they have to provide details on arrests, prosecutions, civil actions, and disciplinary proceedings in the past year, and any entry in the National Decertification Index. So that's just a way of making sure that the commission is up to date on anything recent that's happened, and will be alerted if it seems like maybe this is a way for somebody to circumvent something that would ordinarily occur as a result of one of those actions. And the applicant would have to state that they are no longer an officer or that they expect to resign. And they would have to attest to the information under the pains and penalties of perjury. The form would also state that the commission could invite public comments on the application. It could post something on the website saying, we've received this application and we invite anyone to state whether they see any issues of it. And also that the provision of inaccurate information in the application could constitute grounds for discipline. Section E of this revised policy adds that the application form would also inform the applicant that if the commissioners vote to grant the relief that was requested, the applicant will be given an opportunity to withdraw the application if there are any conditions that the commission would attach to that relief before it becomes effective. And then once the decision becomes effective, the commission will make information on complaints and discipline unavailable in the public database. And I added those words at the beginning in brackets because that's a phrase that should be added, I think, to the policy if it's adopted by the commission. So I would, by these comments, I'm asking the commission to approve of adding that if it adopts this policy. And then it would also state in the form that such information that's removed from the public database would still be included in the commission's internal databases. So we're not getting rid of the information. It can be made available to those who have special access as provided by the regulations. It can still be provided in response to other legal requests, especially where we're required to do so. And it could be disseminated by a vote of the commissioners, even after that relief is granted. And that phrase by a vote of the commissioners is underlined because in the prior policy, it would have allowed for a decision like that to be made either by the executive director or by the commission. This reserves that kind of a decision just to the commissioners. Section F then rounds out the process, providing that the executive director or a designee will circulate the application to the commission's divisions so anybody can raise any problems that they see with it. And then we'll review information on the applicant in any arrest, criminal, civil, and disciplinary records that the commission has, the National Decertification Index, and the commission's own databases. And again, that the executive director could invite public comments on the application. And if the application is sufficient, we'll then ask the commission to vote on whether to allow it and whether to attach any conditions, again, upon giving the applicant notice of those conditions and an opportunity to withdraw the application before that goes into effect. And then section G just states that the commissioners reserve the ability to rescind or amend the policy. So if there are any questions that the chair would like me to entertain, I can do so. We would ask that if the commissioners find this policy satisfactory, that they vote on whether to adopt it at this meeting.
I don't think I see any questions or comments from my fellow commissioners. So I think with that, may I call for a motion to approve what Randy has just gone through? Is there anybody who will make that motion? Commissioner Bluestone, thank you. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Thank you. And I think with that, let me ask for a vote on the motion to approve. Commissioner Baker, please.
Yes.
Commissioner Bluestone. You.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Calderon. He may be.
I apologize, Chair. I'm trying to say yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Ellison.
Yes.
Commissioner Hall.
Yes.
Commissioner Rosian.
Yes.
Commissioner Luma.
Yes.
Commissioner Talley.
Yes.
I also approve, and with that, it's unanimously carried. Thank you, Randy. And then you want to continue with your legal update, please?
Madam Chair, if you could just remind me what's listed as the next item. I can't seem to open the agenda.
I have on the agenda, Officer Physical and Psychological Fitness.
Okay, thank you. I will turn things over to Deputy General Counsel Veronica Lightfoot to present on that issue.
Thank you. Thank you, General Counsel Ravitz. Good morning, Commissioners. The members of the legal team in the General Counsel's office have been working on several initiatives that we hope will be beneficial to the Commission in fulfilling the legislatively mandated mission and purpose of POST. Today, we're introducing several projects and would now like to introduce or reintroduce the area involving physical and psychological examinations of law enforcement officers. Paralegal Elizabeth Smith, who also serves in the role of hearings administrator, is going to provide a brief overview of some of the work she and our interns have engaged in thus far on this topic. We look forward to receiving any comments, suggestions, and questions you may have, either today or at a later time. Our work on these projects and initiatives will be ongoing, and we will include periodic updates to the Commission as we reach various milestones. We will pursue and incorporate the input from you, our commissioners, the various stakeholders, and the communities we serve. Next, we will hear from Ms. Smith. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy General Counsel. If you all don't mind, I'm going to share my screen to show a quick PowerPoint that I created. So can everyone see that? All right. So good morning, Madam Chair and Commissioners. I'm coming before you with a proposed plan to establish psychological and physical fitness standards for law enforcement officers. This brief presentation will give a high-level overview of the purpose of this initiative, the statutory authority allowing for the establishment of such standards, and a proposed plan for how we would like to move forward. So this is a proposal for Commission consideration. These are some goals we would like to accomplish and consider as we develop these standards. So we would like to establish a process for evaluating officer psychological and physical fitness. define standards of the evaluation process, ensure any results or information from the evaluation are non-punitive, and make testing fair and accessible, including opportunities for retesting. This is an overview of the authority allowing for the establishment of psychological and physical fitness standards. The Commission's governing statute provides the Commission shall have all powers necessary or convenient to carry out and effectuate its purposes, including but not limited to the power to establish physical and psychological fitness evaluation pursuant to Section 4 that measures said fitness to ensure officers are able to perform essential job duties. Moving forward, other sections in Chapter 6E, the Division of Police Certification and the Massachusetts Municipal Police Training Commission established in Chapter 6, Section 116, shall jointly establish minimum certification standards for all officers, and that will include a completion of psychological and physical fitness approved by the Commission. So we are currently in the initial planning stage of this. I just want to give a big thank you to our summer interns, Ben Alpert, Jason Lee, and Nick Santiago for collecting research on other jurisdictions. We are currently in the process of analyzing the information that they collected, but from what we've seen thus far, there is a lot of variation between states. So moving forward, we would like to create opportunities for public engagement and partner with the Commission, stakeholders, and other agencies to create a project plan. So we want input from interested parties and people who, have a vested interest in this. So here is a list of potential stakeholders. Oh, Commissioner Ellison?
Yeah, I just before it gets away from me, I would like to see, if possible, as well as for the other commissioners, the data that you were able to get to evaluate where you're getting these ideas from. The other thing and also who would be conducting these these psychological evaluations. And on the physical part, because we had this conversation prior, like for the state police, they have an hour during their work period to be able to physically work out. That's built into their contract. I'm not sure of any other law enforcement that has it. So I think if we're looking at a standard, I think the officers have to have the opportunity to be able to meet the standard during that time period if we're going to hold them to it. So I just wanted to put that in there when this is being evaluated and considered, those factors.
Thank you. Yes, we have had initial conversations with former law enforcement officers, and they did mention that the Mass State Police does have that built into their contracts. So I do think it's important that all officers have a fair opportunity for testing and retesting and meeting those standards. So that's kind of important, and we would like to incorporate that. So any and all feedback is welcome. We're picking up where I was, these are a list of potential stakeholders that we've identified. This is, of course, not everyone that we will be working with, but these are individuals and groups that will provide subject matter expertise that may help guide this process. We also know that there's valuable expertise from the Commission, and we hope to take advantage of that. And all matters will be brought to the Commission for consideration and discussion at general body meetings. So these are some next steps that we identified. We are currently doing research on best practices, who to consult, and the best way to move forward. Overall, I want to emphasize that this is a collaborative project. We are open to any and all feedback from the Commission, post staff, and the general public. These standards are not meant to punish law enforcement officers. We want to work with them to establish fair and reasonable standards. So with that, I would like to open up to commissioners for any other questions and feedback that you may have. Commissioner Ellison?
Yep, sure, yeah.
I just had one follow-up on that. Also, when we're looking at this, are we looking at the HIPAA issues that may arise from these questions about
Yeah,
people's
so
physical?
yeah, that's something that we are looking at. There are other states that have physical fitness standards, and you know, they work with licensed medical professionals and make sure that they're compliant with HIPAA standards. So we would defer to medical professionals on dealing with that, just because that isn't our area.
Right, but a lot of those usually fall in pre-employment. I don't recall having any after I joined the department. That's what I'm saying. I think we run into some HIPAA area issues as after they're pre-employment and they're hired. Those things are required to look at, but now that they're officers, I'm not sure if we still have the
this area,
on the physical part.
If I may, Lizzie, I remember early conversations about this when we were looking at the certification, the initial certification, Commissioner Ellison, concerns about, you know, pre and post employment. One area, and this presentation is to highlight the challenges and the process, you know, going forward. One area that we know of is model policies, for example, that could be a way to incentivize, and this is what Lizzie was referring as a non-punitive, incentivize health and wellness rather than that mandating or you know, or punishing somebody for not meeting the standards. But again, these are real challenges that are not exclusive to Massachusetts, of course. And the point is that we need to, you know, devise a plan for a process and engagement in order to begin to tackle them.
Thank you.
Commissioner Calderon, please.
Thank you, Chair, and I apologize to everybody about my lack of screen today. I just want to say thank you to Elizabeth for reaching out, bringing this to the attention. That the mental health and the physical health and well-being of police officers today is of the utmost importance. She did reach out and have a conversation with me, just to put that publicly, and we're very thankful for it from the law enforcement side. Undoubtedly, it's going to be a long conversation, as many of the avenues will pass on a collective bargaining process. But I just wanted to voice my thanks to her and to the rest of the committee that's working on it, because the physical and the mental health and well-being of police officers is the most important thing that we can address when we're talking about standards here, whether it be present or in the future. So I want to say thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Bluestone, please.
Yes, thanks, Lizzie. I want to also say how much I appreciate you working on this, and just make a point about the initial psychological evaluations, which is just that it's likely that one of the reasons there's such variability across states is that states may have sort of differing professional standards for who can administer those evaluations and what the specialty expertise of those evaluators needs to be. And in Massachusetts, those initial psychological evaluations are administered by psychologists. We left that, I think, vague at the outset because there was some variability in how the initial psychological evaluations of police officers were being conducted. And I think it would be a nice goal to start to develop some consistency about who administers those initial evaluations, and maybe consider whether some type of peer review process for those evaluations could be implemented. And then lastly, I think I would just make the point that I hope that we would sort of take into consideration that the evaluations that occur at the outset of an officer's career are very different from the psychological standards that we might want to think about as an officer goes forward through their career. And so again, thank you so much for your work on it. And I look forward to hearing what you come up with.
Thank you. Commissioner Baker, please.
1 second here. Sorry about that. Yeah, I just wanted to chime in before we got off this topic. I too, at my agency, we offer the officers an hour to work out as well during their shifts. Just going forward, I think this is a great idea. Obviously, I live by the term that I stole from Commissioner Gross. We need to take care of those that take care of us. So the mental health wellness piece, the physical wellness piece is a must. But we gotta be able to fund these things. So first and foremost, these are excellent ideas, but they need to be funded, and they need to be funded yearly. They need to be funded consistently, and they need to be funded from the smallest department to the largest department. So to get these things going, and once you start it, you need to be consistent, because I believe there's an actual law on the books that's not adhered to, where officers are required to retest physical fitness standards after they graduate, and it's just something that can't be funded. So obviously you would have the support of the police leaders, the police themselves around the Commonwealth. But when we get into this, we got to make sure it's something that we can consistently do, and not just have something that we start and have it fall off. So first and foremost, let's make sure we're able to maintain it once we get it started.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the commissioners? Commissioner Luma, please.
Yes, just to echo what others have said, thank you for just paying special attention to this topic. I think it's very important. I also want to be mindful as we're thinking about the process in developing these standards, that there's probably officers who are already engaged in their own private wellness. You know, to Commissioner Ellison's point, yes, we're developing standards, but I think there has to be a balance of kind of respecting the individual's privacy in regards to any mental health concerns that they may be managing currently, as we consider what does it look like to be psychological fit to be an officer. I think there's work people are already doing, and we have to find a way to respect what that looks like in their personal lives, but also recognize that there is a level that has to be met in order to do the job. So I think it's complicated. I think it requires a lot of work that clearly has been begun. And so I just want to make sure that that we're thinking about these things in a real comprehensive way that not only advances the work we're trying to do, but respects the privacies of those who seek attention for their psychological well-being.
Thank you. Any other commissioner comments or questions? If not, let me also thank Veronica and Lizzie and the others who have worked with you on this presentation, and the comments of the commissioners in terms of their specific questions and comments, which I know you will take into consideration as you develop this more fully. I think with that, we move on, Randy, to item number C on legal update, which I believe is maintaining, reporting, and auditing law enforcement records.
Madam Chair, I just wanted to see if there was another topic that Deputy General Counsel Lightfoot wanted to address on in this area.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, General Counsel Ravitz. As we continue in the line of wellness, we have one additional topic we'd like to introduce or speak to the commission regarding. As I previously stated, our general counsel team has been hard at work, and that also includes our records access officer who serves as a paralegal, Ms. Carrie Johnson. And she has a brief presentation along the lines of wellness that we would like for her to give at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Counsel Lightfoot. Over the past few months, I've been working with team members on an initiative to provide support to individuals who have suffered traumatic events that interact with the Post Commission. We're looking to minimize the distress, offer some direction as to how they may attain some assistance, whether these individuals who have experienced trauma are law enforcement officers, minors, part of a marginalized group, or other members of the general public. We're open to sensitize law enforcement officers and civilians that are victims of traumatic events to seek support and counseling. This initiative would involve directing people to resources available in the Commonwealth. We've had many conversations and meetings with team members who have victim awareness backgrounds and those who have served in law enforcement. There seems to be a general agreement that promoting awareness and assistance is a worthy goal, and it's within our agency's authority. As we've seen in public meetings, the commission has continually expressed sensitivity to dramatic impacts certain events can have on individuals, with each member of the commission offering a different perspective. Of course, a strong voice on that subject has been Commissioner Cherry, who has openly expressed concern for her trauma and recognized it from her perspective and through her experiences. And so we thank her for her service on the commission today, and we want to recognize her influence and help spark this initiative and make sure she knows that this is one way in which she will have a lasting impact on the commission and its important work. We hope to continue to collaborate with other divisions and agencies and incorporate input from various interested individuals, including psychologists, victim liaisons, retired and active law enforcement officers, and we hope to heighten awareness regarding victims and individuals who have experienced trauma and to direct them to information and services that are available. Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie. Commissioner Luma, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to just say thank you again. I think, again, this is an important, thank you for reaching out. This is an important topic that I think we've always had a focus on since the beginning as we started to develop this. And so thank you for just highlighting it and making sure that it still is on our radar as we move forward.
Thank you. Commissioner Ellison?
I was just going to say, as a member of law enforcement, I thank you for the attention that's being put to this. And I just wanted to say I would be willing to volunteer my time to work with you from that law enforcement perspective, your team, and hoping we can work on this to get it going in the right direction. Because I don't want officers to see this as punitive. A lot of times when we see something new, we see it as punishment. I don't think this is what's intended by this commission or what we're doing. But it needs to be looked at as help, not harm.
Thank you, Commissioner Ellison. Deputy General Counsel Lightfoot, is there anything else that is part of this portion of our agenda?
No, Madam Chair, that concludes our work. Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, now, Randy Ravitz, please. The next item, as I understand it, has to do with maintaining, reporting, and auditing law enforcement records.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for those great presentations on important issues and your excellent work on that. I will share my screen once again. Okay, as the chair said, this is a presentation on maintaining, reporting, and auditing of law enforcement records and information. And it's a follow-up to a presentation that was given earlier this year. Just by way of background, as far as the Commission's statutory mandate and authority in these areas, with respect to law enforcement agency record keeping and reporting, there are a number of provisions in the statute that either expressly or implicitly call for the Commission to oversee record keeping by agencies and to collect information from agencies. So, for example, Section 3A provides that the Commission shall have all powers necessary or convenient to carry out and effectuate its purposes, including but not limited to a number of different things, including gathering facts and information applicable to its certification decisions and disciplinary decisions, conducting investigations into the qualifications of applicants, requesting and receiving criminal offender record information, and adopting regulations to implement the chapter, including in areas listed in the statute, but not limited to those areas. And section 4 requires the consideration of certain information in the certification process. So that information would need to be obtained from agencies, and they would need to maintain certain information in order for the commission to be able to maintain it. Section 4 also calls for the development of an internal database with various forms of data in addition to the public-facing database. And so there too, that's information that would need to be maintained by agencies and that the commission would need to receive from them. Section 8 then requires another internal database with certain information on complaints and discipline. And Section 16 requires the commission to annually report on certain information, including injuries and deaths, and to analysis that takes into account the nature of allegations, training, and discipline. So again, there too, all of that calls for some standards with respect to agency record keeping and their reporting of information to the commission. And then as far as auditing is even more expressly called for in the statute as far as the provision, the promulgation of regulations. Section 8D of the statute states that the Division of Police Standards can audit records related to complaints, investigations concerning allegations of misconduct or unprofessionalism, including but not limited to personnel records. And it expressly states that the commission shall promulgate rules and regulations establishing an audit procedure. But then it adds that those rules and regulations shall not limit the ability of the Division of Police Standards to initiate an audit at any time and for any reason. And then Section 3A that I spoke about a moment ago, the general statute listing the authority given to the commission, is even worded more broadly. It states, once again, that the commission shall have all powers necessary and convenient, including but not limited to those listed. And it references audits and investigations pursuant to Section 8, but then it also says that the commission can demand access to and inspect, examine, photocopy, and audit all papers, books, and records of any law enforcement agency, and that it can adopt regulations, including but not limited to what's listed in the statute. And so it seems to state that the audits that could be conducted by the commission are not limited to the subjects specifically identified in Section 8. So that's one impetus for exploring this issue further in the development of these regulations, is the specific provisions of the statute that call for auditing regulations and that require necessarily the commission to collect certain information. But this also comes from the commission's own experience. In the couple of years that the commission has been in existence, it's been receiving information for use in certifying officers, as well as historical disciplinary records and reports of new complaints and investigations. And what the commission has seen is that there are differences in record keeping practices across agencies. And some people have complained that there are errors in information maintained by law enforcement agencies, and that there's also a benefit to standardized terminology across agencies. There's also information that if the commission obtained it, it would help, as I said a moment ago, it helped the commission satisfy the requirements that it has regarding information that needs to be included in databases and information that the commission needs to report. Then there are also certain types of records and certain updates that it would be helpful to receive more promptly, especially where prompt action by the commission is warranted, either expressly within the statute or implicitly. It's also, we have found helpful to streamline communications through agency liaisons and through dedicated email addresses. So providing requirements for that will help ensure that that takes place would benefit agencies and the commission. And of course, as was mentioned the last time this issue was discussed, the work of all certain officers and agencies and their approaches to record keeping, to reporting, and to other areas of their service are deserving of recognition. And we've seen ways in which certain agencies approach things in a way that should be replicated because it's so well done. And this would provide a vehicle to learn about those and to help ensure that those best practices are performed by agencies throughout the Commonwealth. So as far as steps taken thus far, once again, at the May meeting, there was a presentation on developing regulations in this area, and commissioners offered reactions at that time, and a news article covered the discussion. And so since then, the drafting process has proceeded consistently with what was laid out in that presentation, a copy of which is included in your meeting packet for this meeting. And that's taken into account thoughts from inside and outside our agency, as well as sources on auditing government records and sources on auditing law enforcement records in particular, one of which is shown in the little graphic there. It's considered by a lot of people to be the Bible on auditing government records, and it's actually referenced in a couple of statutes and as well as regulations that have been promulgated by other agencies. And so I think it's a good place to look for what the legislature might have had in mind when it referred to auditing, and in any event, what are best practices for the commission to engage in auditing of law enforcement. So the draft that is evolving and that can be made available when it's ready is it reflects certain themes. One is that it's not limited to the subjects referenced in Section 8D for the reasons I said a moment ago, namely the other statutory provisions that provide for broader auditing or that require the commission to collect certain information in other areas. It also would make clear that it's not intended to address every form of record keeping that a law enforcement agency might engage in. Rather, it gives particular attention to certain areas. Even though it's not limited to Section 8D, it gives particular attention to those subjects referenced: complaints, investigations into misconduct and unprofessionalism, for example. It also gives particular attention to other subjects that are highlighted that feature prominently in Chapter 6E, as well as to forms of information that, as I said, the commission is required to maintain in its databases or to report on its own, and records related to law enforcement agencies' interactions with the commission. So records related to certification, related to the types of complaints that they're expected to report to the commission. And then also, as I said, record keeping and reporting issues that we've observed and that we've seen a benefit to addressing. Then with respect to auditing provisions, there are some other things that are incorporated into the draft provisions. They're written in such a way as to not constrain the Division of Police Standards, but to allow them flexibility consistent with what the statute provides, and to expressly authorize the division to take certain steps and examine certain areas, because even though the statute is so open-ended, it's helpful for the commission through regulations to leave no doubt that the commission through the Division of Police Standards would be able to take certain steps. So providing for an examination not only of how agencies maintain and report information, so not just looking at the nature and quality of their record keeping and the reporting, but also whether they're compliant with other legal requirements, and looking at how they handle matters. So in other words, performance auditing, a term that's often used. And it would also authorize the division to provide recommendations and to create action plans, working cooperatively with the agency on those. At the same time, these regulations, by spelling all these things out, would put agencies on notice of what auditors may look for and how they may proceed. And so, in other words, the ability to audit is closely tied to the requirements that agencies have in terms of what records they maintain and what they report. The agencies need to know what it is that they should be doing in this area before there's an audit. So these regulations would spell that out, give them a sense of what to expect. But at the same time, it focuses on not on everything that could be said regarding auditing and exactly how audits would proceed, but things that belong in regulations because they authorize or they require certain action and they should have the force of law. So not necessarily a step-by-step guide to auditing, and that could be developed separately. And all of this, of course, is subject to the commissioner's views and decisions. And so going forward, there'll be more research into sources that are out there regarding auditing. There'll be more solicitation of ideas and reactions from those inside and outside our agency. Any thoughts from inside or outside are certainly invited and encouraged. The drafting process will continue, and certain larger policy questions will be highlighted. Just one example, by the way, is whether these regulations should also allow for auditing of records maintained by individual officers as well as records maintained by the agencies that they work for. So that's one policy question that I wanted to flag at this point to generate thought about it because I expect that would come up later. So thank you very much. If there are questions that the chair would like me to entertain, I can do so.
Commissioner Ellison, please.
Yeah, Randy, thank you for that presentation. Quinn, have there been any audits conducted since the establishment of the commission? And my reason for asking that is because we spent a lot of emphasis on the officers' behavior, but not the agencies that are over the time that we look into that and whether or not the discipline is being meted out equally. I know that's been a huge concern of mine in my time in law enforcement, looking at records and comparing them, that things are not equal and fair across the board. So being able to look at those a lot more frequently. Yeah, I'm sorry, I think I lost you back in there. Yeah, to be fair to the officers, that it's being meted across the board, the discipline, but the accountability of the agency's tasked with meting out that discipline.
Thank you. So thus far, there haven't been formal audits. Certainly there are times when information and records are collected and they're reviewed from agencies in various ways, but not processes that you'd refer to as a formal audit. And so this would be something new, and again, something that the statute contemplates. And the type of thing that you're referring to, Commissioner, is the type of thing that auditors could look for. So they could look at not only again the record keeping and the reporting, but what it tells us about how agencies are functioning and how they compare to one another, and what the commission is seeing across the Commonwealth, and how it could get every agency to operate in a way that is consistent with what the best agencies or the best practices, I should say, that agencies are doing.
Right, because I think some folks feel accountability that at the top they're immune from it, and that they don't get held to the same standard as the officers. There's a lot of focus on that, but not the folks who are charged with overseeing that at the top. You know, I'd like to see more emphasis on that as well. And I think the audit allows that to take place.
Thank you, Commissioner Ellison. Any other questions or comments from my fellow commissioners on this portion of our legal update? Don't think I see anybody else indicating that they wish to make a question, to ask a question or make a comment. Let me thank the members of the legal staff for the material that you presented to us. I think it is apparent from the breadth of what you presented, the hard work that everybody has put into these matters. And I think from the nature of the questioning and the comments, you understand that the commissioners recognize the importance of what is currently occurring. I think with that, I don't believe there are any other specific items listed on the public meeting portion of the agenda. And there are no matters not anticipated by the chair at the time of posting. And I would at this time then entertain a motion to go into executive session in accordance with the relevant statutes that are set forth in the public meeting agenda to consider during our executive session a review of request to revoke, suspension, a division of standards request for approval to conduct preliminary inquiries in 3 cases, and the approval, I should say, of commencement of adjudicatory proceedings for 2 cases, and the approval, the consideration of the minutes of the executive session of October 24th of this year. Is there such a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. And to members of the public, I should say before I take a vote on the motion that we will not be reconvening the public meeting portion of our meeting today after our executive session. And I think with that, let me take a vote in terms of adjournment and going into executive session. Commissioner Baker, please.
Yes.
Mr. Bluestone.
Yes.
Mr. Calderon.
Yes.
Mr. Ellison.
Yes.
Mr. Hall.
Yes.
Mr. Kezerozian.
Yes.
Commissioner Luma.
Yes.
Mr. Talley.
Yes.
And I also approve, so that's unanimously approved. Again, thanks to all the staff who have worked so hard on the matters that were addressed today. We'll take a 5-minute break before we enter our executive session. Thank you.